went toward this boat from the back when it was slowly stopped at the port, and we started shouting at people like, "Are you from Myanmar?" And then they were so shocked because it's super dark, as you could see. It's dark, and they didn't know what to say. First, they were actually teasing me like, "What are you doing here?" That kind of, because they just thought that it was nothing. But then we explained that we were journalists from Myanmar, and they were so shocked. They had never seen any visitor like that in their life since they were taken there. So they started telling us that they had no contact with their families. Their families thought that they were dead already for many years. And we saw all these people loading fish, unloading fish from the fishing boats. And Robin and I started recognizing the name of the fishing boats and the ships' names. Then we sent it to Martha. Martha, do you want to explain that a little bit?
Good job. So Robin is texting. These guys are in a cage, Martha. They're in a cage, and I'm like, that's really good. Part one, like we found people who are enslaved, but get the images you need, but then quickly tell me the name of the boat and tell me the species of the fish that they're putting in the boat, and tell me any identifying boat numbers, and get wonky on me. And what they were finding was so compelling. One thing that Esther might not share is that these Burmese men were pretty shocked to have a Burmese woman, and were very protective of her, also very interested in her, and she was having drawing a lot of attention, let's just say. Is that fair? Yeah. So it was very challenging, and what I really wanted was the data. And so when they told me it was Silver Sea Line, Bangkok, IMO, and they gave me the numbers, and then that boat left Benjina loaded with seafood, we used the Marine Traffic website. There's about 5 different websites which track boats. Every one of these large boats has an AIS satellite beacon that is tracking where it goes, and on these websites you can see where the seafood, or where any boat is going. And we've used this again and again since then. Now the boats are sometimes turning off their satellites, as some of you know. But there's also now 3 different very well-funded technology sites that are trying to use this data and other data to show where boats go to stop IUU fishing, which could impact human trafficking. Anyways, every day I would log in and follow the boat, and then I'd go to sleep, and Margie in Jakarta would wake up and follow the boat because we wanted to meet it wherever it was. And so we tracked it and tracked it and tracked it as it came right on up into Samut Sakhon. When it landed there it was, Silver Sea Line. Same fish, caught by slaves. So this was a critical moment, right? So get this on film, get this on photo, and then we had rented a couple of trucks, dark shells, get in the back to follow it, see where it goes. So the drivers were not necessarily clear on the concept of being surreptitious, but also not losing the truck. And but they did follow him into different companies, a number of different companies, and then we began looking at U.S. Customs bills of lading. There's a few different websites now, Panjiva, Import Genius, some others that will list every custom bill of lading. So we could put in the name of the company that truck went into, and we could see where they ship fish to outside of Thailand. We had gathered a list of names of American companies that they were shipping fish to from the various places where we had seen the trucks go in. And then I went to this Boston seafood show and told the National Fisheries Institute that I was there for a story about labor abuse and that I wanted to talk to the many companies who we had tracked this seafood to. They put out a blog with my photo to everybody at the conference saying, Martha Mendoza is here to interview you about labor abuses. We've already spoken to her about this. And so it was unfriendly, to say the least. I was followed through the whole conference, but it was a seafood convention. Our photographer and videographer asked for me to stay inside the press room so they could get their cutaways and their shots before I showed up. we were getting close to being ready to publish. We had Men in a Cage. We had meticulously tracked it to companies. We had given the companies an opportunity to respond, but we needed the Thai government and the Indonesian government to respond quickly, because once we had contacted these companies, you know, at that point in the investigation when you tell somebody, I have this information, and then they start scrambling to make it untrue in some way or to soften the blow. Yeah, it's so frustrating. So we quickly wanted to get Thai and Indonesia on video, officials, and they were also there at the same conference. So even though we have reporters in Thailand and Indonesia, it was easier to get this Thai Frozen Foods Association president at the seafood conference. He was there to discuss their good labor practices, and on video he said, you know, we've cleaned this whole thing up, this is not happening. And I said, it is still happening, let me show you the pictures. And I had brought a little folder with the pictures of the men in the cage and how we tracked it, etc. And he said, it's still happening, we're going to stop this. Here are some of the brands that we found on those customs bills of lading that we tracked it back to. So when our story went, we were able to name these common American brands, or Stavis and Santa Monica Seafood. If you eat fish in the United States, you would know these names very well. So we named these brands. We were ready to go, but our lawyers wanted to know what the hell we were doing and how we were going to get sued once they saw those brand names. So we put together a very high-tech description of the island, the jail. Here's a Silver Sea boat. Here it went to the port. Here's the trucks going to the different places, including the fish market. The deal with supply chain is that if one tainted fish goes into a factory, everything in there from a legal perspective is seen as tainted as part of a product of human trafficking. Do you understand what I'm saying? So the lawyers kept saying, how can you say that every fish at Walmart has, you know, was caught by one of these guys on Benjina? And no, you can't say that. But you can say that it entered the supply chain, and that made for a very tricky writing. This was not our final draft, but because you're journalists, I'll show you how we argued over every line. Benjina, Indonesia, and then we said the Burmese slaves. And we said that because we wanted to show some distance from Indonesia, but we knew that an American reader would not know the difference at all. These slaves sat on the floor and stared through. You saw in the photos, they're not sitting on the floor necessarily, and so did we want to say that or not? We argued about that a great deal. And stared through, well, were they standing there staring, or were they talking, etc.? Through the rusty bars. An editor kept putting in the word metal, the rusty metal bars, and I kept saying, if they're rusty, they have to be metal, let's take that out, of their locked cage. Again, controversial among us, because why, if it's the word locked, like if it's not locked, it seems to me understood that it's locked, or else they would, it's a cage. And that word too, is it a jail, is it a cage? How do we explain that they're behind these bars? Hidden on a tiny tropical island, thousands of miles from home. So if we're saying that, do we need to say Burmese? Just a few yards away, other workers. And this is something in writing about human trafficking you probably all know, but calling a slave a worker is potentially very offensive. They're not wanting to be working necessarily. So that was a dicey word. Loaded cargo ships with slave, and now we have slave in two sentences in a row. I'm going crazy on that. Slave caught seafood, and if there's an English major in here, you'll know that probably should have a hyphen. That crowds, that word crowd was a Skype call error that we eventually cleared up. This is all 40 hours of nonstop editing, one sentence, I think. We had said tainted, but the editors felt that the word tainted made people think the seafood would make them sick. So then we said, what about clouds? And they said clouds works, but they heard the word crowds. And there's actually a slightly different meaning between crowds, which means you're squeezing in like in an elevator, and clouds, which means you're kind of seeping into it. Clouds of supply networks, this was lawyer speak, right, to keep us from getting sued, of major supermarkets, restaurants, and even pet stores in the United States. We did come to an agreement eventually. This was back when they said we could have 3 bylines on a story. By the end of the year, they were letting us have 4. So you'll see we juggled bylines on these various stories. After the story broke, Indonesian officials immediately went to Benjina to interview the men, and Robin accompanied them, and they began interviewing people one by one. And Robin said to them, once you interview them, and the men being interviewed as well, said, once we come talk to the police, we can't go back to the boats without getting beaten up or worse. And they said, not to worry, we're going to take you with us. And Robin said, you're taking them with you? And they said, yes. And she said, how many are you taking? And they said, we'll take all of them. So she was like, okay. And so they put out a loudspeaker, and they said, anybody who wants to come talk to us or leave, come now. And people began running out of buildings, out of small houses, off of boats. People were just grabbing small bags and dashing down to the docks where they were making the announcements. And as the reality sank in, it was this amazing time happening at Benjina where people were realizing they were not going to be enslaved anymore. They gathered them up and said, how many of you want to leave? And everybody raised their hands. We're trying to file stories on this as it's happening with horrible comms. Robin's calling, Margie in Jakarta, who's dealing with me, where it's like 3 a.m. I mean, we were just juggling to write this. It was also Jewish Passover, so it's this Exodus moment in this day, and the rain is falling. It was just this amazing time. More and more kept coming. They commandeered the Thai boats and put these men on them because they had no capacity, and they didn't even want to leave them for a day. So they commandeered the same boats where they had been enslaved and took them to Ambon, where they had like a hurricane rescue center with some pads and some supply kits so that they could begin to get their names back, their IDs back. Meanwhile, I'm on the U.S. side of this saying, okay, we just reported that all this slave-caught seafood is entering U.S. supply chains. U.S. has a law, an 85-year-old law, that says slave-caught or slave-produced goods cannot be imported into the United States. Why isn't this being enforced? And what they said is that there's a loophole in this law that said unless you can say that there's a consumptive demand in the United States. And the law came about in the 30s and 40s during the war, and the idea was that the U.S. needed rubber from Southeast Asia to prepare for the war and fight the war. And they knew that this was slave-produced, but they also knew they couldn't get the rubber. And so they wrote that if there's a consumptive demand, even if it's produced by a slave, it can be imported. And so on Capitol Hill, they immediately, very quickly had hearings to close that loophole and change the law. And by the beginning of this year, they began stopping loads of, U.S. Customs has been stopping loads, particularly they went for the low-hanging fruit, which was Chinese labor camps, Chinese prison camps that openly export products to the United States, and several of those have been stopped now. At the Rescue Relief Center, we realized that these men were still somewhat nameless, and we wanted to tell their stories more closely. Esther and Robin had been so moved by their stories, so we brainstormed about how to do that. As they were being photoed, everybody had to get a photo, an ID number, and a birth date. I'll hand it to Esther. We saw an opportunity.
Right, so what we did was to kind of document individual slaves who had escaped from the island. So we actually try to get as much information as possible from all these men before they leave. So we asked their names, their age, and their experiences, how they have been treated. So this is kind of an interactive that AP did online, that when we have like some pages for this, and for example, this boy was only 17 years old, and then we would put the quote that he said, like, I was always beaten, and some of these guys were also saying, like, I was tortured a lot. I was beaten with a stingray fish tails. So it's actually quite poisonous, apparently. Some of these men are saying, like, I thought our stories were forgotten, and this guy said, we want people know about what happened to us in our life. So we did this interactive so that people can see how many of them, and how, like, a kind of a facial expression as well, like the feeling that they had because they were still in a very shocking experience right after this. And And then some of these men just came back to Myanmar batch by batch, and Robin and I would go to the airport every time they came back, 4 in the morning, 2 in the morning, to follow them again, like to make sure that we don't lose contact with them, because there are still many people who we haven't interviewed. But we were looking for, at that time, we were looking for a character that we can do a story of the return slaves. But then Margie, when she was in Tour, an island where they were rescued, to the second island called Tour, and Margie found this person who was about in his 40s, and she started talking to many guys to know about their stories, and then she found one perfect person, like a person who was trafficked when he was 14, and now he's in his late 40s. So he ended his whole life in Indonesian island. He was on and off from the fishing boats. He was tortured. He was almost killed. He was so close to being killed, and he escaped from the fishing boat. So Margie decided to follow this person. So when he returned back home, we actually followed to his village to do a reunion story. So this is his younger sister, who loved him very much when she was only 10, that her brother left her. So that was a very heartbreaking reunion in his village. I would say, like, we were just standing there. We felt like we were part of this Hollywood movie. Like, the whole village is crying because he came back. He was so shocked. This is his mother. So when he left, his mother was young and beautiful and recognizable. But now he was so shocked to see his mother. And this is the reunion. They had this like traditional thing. They pulled some kind of liquid on his head so that the evil thing will go away from him. So they welcome him like that, and we interviewed him, and also like the reunion, interviewing people. When we were in his village, actually, there were a lot of these old ladies coming to this house and started asking. He wasn't the only one who was trafficked. He went there with 5 others, which were our sons. So these names we actually never found. So there were a lot of missing people. I mean, we would say we don't know how they ended up where, because these were not on our list. We tried to find as possible, like we tried hard. But then we started asking about one question to all these returned slaves. Like, do you feel like all of your friends are here? And then people started coming out with this idea, like, no, my friend is missing. This name is missing. That name is missing. There are a lot of people who are still missing, and they know the name of the fishing boats. So when we were on that island, we tried to note the name of the fishing boat. So mostly it would call Antasina. Antasina is an Indonesian name, but then it has the number like 829, 819, that kind of stuff. So what we did was, there was one local Thai organization in Thailand. It's LPN, the Labor Promotion Network. They were also working on this, helping the fishermen or labor issue in Thailand. So we actually asked some of these names if they know anything. So we matched the companies. So the name of the fishing boats and the owner of the companies. So finally, some of these fishermen were telling us, like, actually that boat didn't come back, this boat didn't come back, because they were still in the sea out fishing. So then Martha took over to chase these missing boats.
So I should mention that around this time 800 slaves have been returned, 1,000 slaves have been returned, 1,200 slaves have been returned. IOM was coordinating it with a whole bunch of NGOs, but every time we'd get a new update, we were just so buoyed, but also so frustrated knowing more men were out there. We found the boat registrations, and a number of the men were talking about this one area called Dog's Leg near Papua New Guinea. And so I called NASA and the Defense Department and South Pac and a number of other people. I figured out who has satellite photos up there and asked them if they could get some satellite photos so we could identify the boats. This was also when the Rohingya were, where was this? There was missing boats with like hundreds of people on them. So I was also asking, can we get satellite imagery of this to find these boats? And there's a private company in Boulder, Colorado called Digital Globe that has launched this massive satellite camera. And they said, yeah, we'll help, but keep in mind this is going to be like, and this is I tell you this because my colleagues never let me put it in a story. They said it's going to be like finding a moving needle in a haystack, which I thought was a wonderful quote. Then they sent me this photo. And I was like, oh, and this is like 500 square miles of the region. And they said, start taking a look, zoom in on this, see what you can find, and we will as well. And then they said, we found your boats. And there they were doing what's called transshipment. They're offloading seafood onto here. These were the boats that had been at Benjina that are now out there in Papua New Guinea. And we had to make a journalistic decision of whether we want to call the authorities or whether we want to report the story, and how to do both at the very exact same time in many different time zones. We kind of did both at the same time. We notified the International Organization of Migration, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia. And as soon as and we sent these photos to S, who could take them to,
So what we did was Mother sent me this photo, and these two guys who were showing, who were pointing at the picture, were the two guys. Recently, the other guy, while the other guys were officially rescued by the different governments, like by organizations, these two guys just popped out in Yangon, in a capital city, in the middle of nowhere, like from nowhere. We didn't see them in any boats. They actually they were on a runaway boats using the international waters, entering Thailand, not at the port anymore. They went to one of these really fancy beach resort, and they went all the way to border of Myanmar, and then they entered back home. And we found them in Yangon. Like, how come did you come back? We just came back with through international waters. We got some money from the people. They wanted to shut our mouth, so we took money and come back. So they actually saw these boats on nearby Papua New Guinea. So we showed them this picture. If they recognize the boat, and they said it's exactly what we were looking for, and so we confirmed about this.
So then Ibu Susi from Indonesia flew drones and low-flying aircraft over and got better photos of them. And when those boats moved into international waters, they arrested the captains, and that prosecution continues, and they freed more men on those boats and returned them home. And here they are kind of realizing that their ordeal may be over. This is the beginning of the prosecution. This is about half of what we did. But we did it again, and we did it again, and now that we have this methodology, we're doing it again. And I'd love to share some of those technical stuff with you if you wish, but I also want to hear what they have to say as well. So,
thank you so much, Martha. It was really phenomenal. Now let's come to the Nepal. This is the country which has been actually an epicenter of human trafficking in the region. But I as a journalist based in neighboring India, has hardly seen a hard-hitting story from this country. The reasons are really different for that. The capacity of the local newsrooms to spend money and devote resources for such a lengthy, time-consuming, investigating reporting. But I'm glad to have with us a Nepali colleague, Surendra. He has done a major investigation about how number of people from this country are smuggled and taken to America through different international routes, how they have been abused, cheated along the way. So he will take a help of translator, but that's all fine.
Thank you. Good morning and namaste. म पहिला यो हाम्रो नेपालबाट कसरी चाहिँ ट्राफिकर्सहरूले नेपालीहरूलाई अमेरिका लगेका छन् भन्ने छोटकरीमा बताउँछु। त्यसपछि मेरो एउटा लामो समय लगाएर गरेको 7 महिना लगाएर गरेको एउटा स्टोरी, त्यो स्टोरी म कसरी भयो भनेर चाहिँ म सुनाउनेछु। म सबैभन्दा पहिला म कसरी अमेरिका लैजान्छन् ट्राफिकर्सहरूले नेपालीलाई भनेर संक्षेपमा त्यो जानकारी गराउँछु। त्यसपछि एउटा लामो स्टोरी जसलाई मैले 7 महिना लगाएर गरेँ, त्यो स्टोरी चाहिँ कसरी गरियो भनेर त्यसको एउटा टुल्स एन्ड टेक्निक्स के मैले अपनाएँ त्यो बारेमा चाहिँ म बताउने छु।
My presentation will begin by introducing how Nepalis are pursuing their American dream, and in the process being trafficked by human trafficking network, and then gradually I'll get into techniques of how I came up to report this whole thing.
सुरुमा उनीहरूले काठमाडौँबाट अमेरिकासम्म चाहिँ लैजाँदाखेरि ह्युमन ट्राफिकर्सहरूले 12-13 वटा देशहरू हुँदै अमेरिका पुर्याउने गरेका रहेछन्। सुरुमा काठमाडौँबाट दुबई, कतार हुँदै, कतारबाट ब्राजिल, ब्राजिलबाट बोलिभिया, बोलिभिया टु पेरू, पेरूबाट इक्वेडर, इक्वेडर कोलम्बिया, पानामा, त्यसपछि कोस्टारिका, निकारागुआ, होन्डुरस, ग्वाटेमाला, मेक्सिको हुँदै बल्ल युएस पुर्याउने गरेका। त्यो यो रुट मार्फत उनीहरूले लैजाने गरेका रहेछन्। यसको लागि चाहिँ 1 महिनादेखि 1 वर्षसम्म लाग्ने रहेछ एउटा मान्छेलाई चाहिँ ट्राफिकर्सहरूले अमेरिका पुर्याउनको लागि।
So as you can see in the map, the traffickers take Nepalis from Kathmandu through 13 countries, and it could take months and even up to a year before they are finally trafficked into America.
यसरी लैजाँदाखेरि पर पर्सन ट्राफिकर्सहरूले चाहिँ 5 million रुपिस एउटा व्यक्तिबाट चाहिँ उनीहरूले लिने गरेका।
So it could cost people up to 5 million rupees individual, paying all the way as they go through from country to country by the time they reach the United States.
यसरी जाँदाखेरि उनीहरूले नेपालबाट बोलिभियासम्म चाहिँ एयर रुट युज गर्छन्। त्यसपछि बोलिभियाबाट युएसएसम्म चाहिँ ल्यान्ड रुट, बस, ट्रक, भ्यान, बोट उनीहरूले युज गरेर त्यसरी चाहिँ युएस पुर्याउने गरेको रहेछ।
So from Kathmandu up to Bolivia, they are flown by air, and from there the traffickers use different means. They make them walk through the jungle, and then they drive them in lorries, cram them in trucks, and then drive them through nights into across the borders until they reach the United States.
जब मैले यो स्टोरी गरेँ त्यस पछाडि पब्लिस भएपछि उनीहरूले अर्को रुट युज गर्न थाले, थोरै चेन्ज गर्यो उनीहरूले रुटमा। पहिला काठमाडौँबाट कतार सिधै लैजान्थ्यो भने पछि उनीहरूले काठमाडौँबाट थाइल्यान्ड, इन्डिया, थाइल्यान्ड, कम्बोडिया, भियतनाम, दुबई हुँदै युएस लैजान थाले। त्यस पछाडि
after I first exposed this route of human trafficking of Nepalis, the traffickers stopped using the route that they were originally using. Earlier they were taking Nepalis from first Nepal to Qatar and from there on. But later on they changed that to from Nepal through India via Cambodia. So they were constantly changing the routes.
अब मैले कसरी चाहिँ यो ह्युमन ट्राफिकिङ स्टोरीहरु चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ भयो भनेर अब बताउन गइरहेको छु।
I am going to get into the techniques of how these trafficking networks actually operate.
सुरुमा एउटा नचिनेको मान्छेले 5-6 महिना चाहिँ रेगुलर उसले मेला गरिरह्थ्यो। उसले यति मात्र भन्थ्यो कि यहाँबाट चाहिँ अमेरिका लैजान हिँडेका मान्छेहरु ब्राजिलमा अलपत्र परेका छन्, यहाँ बिजोग छ नेपालीहरुको भन्थ्यो। सुरुमा मैले त्यति ध्यान दिइन, 25-7 महिनापछि चाहिँ कन्टिन्यू आउन थालेपछि चाहिँ के रहेछ त एकचोटि बुझौँ भनेर मैले उसको नम्बर मागेर उसँग ब्राजिलमा फोन गरेर कुराकानी गरेँ।
So the first step to my investigation was I got to know from this individual from Brazil that Nepalis were being trafficked through that route, and Nepalis were in a traveling in a very dangerous condition, being trafficked into the United States. So I got his number and then I contacted him, and that's how I got to know. I got my initial information.
ऊ नेपाली नै थियो। ऊ पनि पहिला त्यसरी नै 6-7 वर्ष पहिला अमेरिकै जानलाई चाहिँ ह्युमन ट्राफिकर्सहरूले लिएर गएको रहेछ र त्यहाँ गएर अल्पत्र परेर छोडेको र ऊ चाहिँ त्यहाँ सेटल भइसकेको रहेछ 6-7 महिना।
Coincidentally, this individual that I was talking to, a Nepali, was himself a victim of trafficking, who was on his way to the United States, but settled down in Brazil. That was 14-15 years back.
त्यसपछि मैले उसँग चाहिँ त्यहाँ को अल्पत्र परेका छन्, अल्पत्र परेका नेपालीहरूको त्यहाँ मोबाइल मलाई कन्ट्याक्ट गराइदियो भने त्यो ब्राजिलमा मात्र होइन, उसले चिली बोलिभियामा पनि रहेका नेपालीहरूको चाहिँ मलाई नम्बर उपलब्ध गराइदियो। त्यसपछि मैले त्यहाँ रहेका अल्पत्र परेर बसिरहेका नेपालीहरूसँग चाहिँ कुराकानी गर्न सुरु गरेँ।
So through this person, I requested him to provide me a number and contact of other similarly trafficked Nepalis who were languishing in various South American countries, including Bolivia, Chile, Brazil.
मैले सबैसँग नाम लिस्ट माग्दाखेरि 3टा बोलिभिया, चिली, ब्राजिलमा 500 भन्दा बढी नेपाली त्यहाँ अल्पत्र रहेको अवस्थामा थिए।
And through various contacts, I came to know that there were at least 500 people languishing in these South American countries.
मैले केही मान्छेको त्यसपछि पासपोर्टको फोटोकपी गरेर मलाई पठाइदिनु भने उनीहरूको चाहिँ एक्जिट भिसा छ कि छैन के छ, एयर टिकटहरू मगाए।
Then I requested some of them to send their copy of their passport, their visa, and they sent those documents.
उनीहरू बिना भिसा ब्राजिल पुगेका थिए। उनीहरूसँग भिसा थिएन, मात्र एयर टिकट थियो। उनीहरू बिना भिसा नै ब्राजिल पुगेका रहेछन्। त्यसपछि मैले हाम्रो इमिग्रेसनमा गएर सोधेँ यो कसरी सम्भव छ, बिना भिसा मान्छे कसरी चाहिँ ब्राजिल पुग्न सक्छ, यसरी बिना भिसै हामीले उन्न दिन्छौँ भन्दाखेरि यसरी दिन मिल्दैन। र मैले उनीहरूले पासपोर्टमा लगाएको एक्जिट, हाम्रो त्रिभुवन विमानस्थलमा लगाएको एक्जिट स्टिकर देखाएँ, यो नक्कली हो भने अध्यगमनले चाहिँ।
So when I had the copies of those passports, I went to the immigration office and I inquired from them, how is it possible for a Nepali to reach the South American country without even having visa stamped in their passports? And there was evidence of their air tickets. So the immigration officials denied that these immigration stamp of their exit visa were fake. So
त्यसपछि मैले उनीहरूलाई चाहिँ त्यो जुन दिन उनीहरूको चाहिँ एक्जिट भिसा स्टिकर लगाएको छाप लगाएको थियो त्यो दिनको चाहिँ कतार एयरवेजको टिकट थियो। मैले त्यो दिनको चाहिँ फ्लाइटको चाहिँ लिस्ट मागेँ को उडेका थिए त्यहाँ भनेर माग्दाखेरि उनीहरूले बल्ल बल्ल त्यो सूची चाहिँ दिए, तर जुन मसँग चाहिँ पासपोर्टहरू चाहिँ आइपुगेको थियो त्यो उनीहरूको नाम त्यहाँ थिएन, त्यो उड्ने सूचीमा थिएन।
So when I got the flight details from which these individuals had left for Qatar, I searched for the name of these individuals. I could not find the name of these individuals in the flight list.
त्यसपछि मैले कतार एयरवेजमा गएँ। अध्यागमनबाट प्राप्त नभएपछि कतार एयरवेजमा गएर त्यो दिनको चाहिँ फ्लाइट डिटेल्स मागेँ, को चाहिँ बोर्डिङ पास लिएर चाहिँ चढेको छ भनेर माथि उनीहरूले सूची दिए। अध्यागमनको सूची र कतार एयरवेजको सूची जुदाउँदाखेरि 27 जना मान्छे चाहिँ अध्यागमनको सूचीमा थिएनन्, जो उडेका थिए त्यो दिन एयरलाइन्सको सूची उसमा चाहिँ थिए।
So when I compared the list of the immigration department of the people that had left the country in that particular flight, and I compared it to the Qatar Airways list of people who had boarded the flight, there was discrepancy there. At least 27 people, names of 27 people were missing from the list of the immigration department. So clearly the people had taken the flight, but they were not in the list of the immigration department.
त्यसपछि एयरपोर्टमा सेटिङ हुने गरेको चाहिँ खुल्यो। त्यति नै बेला ब्राजिलबाट 5 जना फर्केर आए जो अमेरिका जान भनेर हिँडेका थिए, अनि उनीहरूले चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ एयरपोर्टमा सेटिङ हुन्छ भनेर चाहिँ उनले बताए, उनीहरू कसरी ब्राजिलसम्म पुगे भने।
So this is when I came to find out about the nexus between the human traffickers and people in the immigration department at the airport. In the meantime, 5 people who were trapped in Brazil made it back to Nepal, and they confirmed how the nexus actually operated.
त्यसपछि अध्यक्षमण्डलले छानबिन सुरु गर्यो। केही 5 जना आफ्ना कर्मचारीलाई कारबाही पनि गर्यो, तर जाने क्रम चाहिँ रोकिएको थिएन, नेपालीहरू गइरहेकै थिए। त्यसपछि मेरो सम्पर्कमा चाहिँ एकजना व्यक्ति जान लागेको चाहिँ मैले थाहा पाएर उनीसँग सम्पर्क गरेँ।
So the immigration department initiated investigation after this report was published, and 5 officials were also charged, and they were prosecuted according to the department's laws. The department took action against them, but the trafficking network still continued, and I met a person who was about to leave via the same route.
त्यति नै बेला एकजना व्यक्ति जान लागेको मेरो सम्पर्कमा आइपुगे र उनीसँग मैले के रिक्वेस्ट गरेँ भने, ठिक तपाईँ जाँदाखेरि कहाँ पुग्नुहुन्छ, मलाई चाहिँ कुनै पनि माध्यमबाट इमेलबाट हुन्छ कि त्यति बेला स्काइपमा कुराकानी गर्ने हुन्थ्यो, त्यो जेबाट हुन्छ मलाई चाहिँ केही न केही जानकारी दिनुहोस्, तपाईँ कुन ठाउँमा पुग्दै हुनुहुन्छ भनेर रिक्वेस्ट गर्दा र उसले चाहिँ त्यसमा चाहिँ एक्सेप्ट गरेर मेरो चाहिँ प्रस्तावलाई। त्यसपछि उसँग म लगातार कन्ट्याक्टमा रहिरहेँ।
So when I came into contact of this person who was willingly being trafficked through these countries, I requested him, and he agreed to keep me updated about how he was being trafficked from which country before he enters the United States.
मैले यति बेलासम्म ब्राजिलसम्म पुगेकाको मात्र स्टोरी गरेको थिएँ, अमेरिकासम्म पुग्छन् कि पुग्दैनन् भन्ने पनि मलाई थाहा भइसकेको थिएन त्यति बेलासम्म। यसरी अमेरिका लैजाँदा हामी जाँदै गरेको हो, तर हामी ब्राजिलबाट उता जान सकेनौँ र यहाँ अल्पत्र भन्ने मात्र उनीहरूले भन्दै आएका थिए पीडितहरूले।
So until now I knew that people were being trapped in various South American countries in their process of being trafficked into the United States. I was not actually sure whether many people had succeeded reaching the United States.
त्यसपछि 7 महिनामा उनी अमेरिकामा पुगे। यहाँ काठमाडौँबाट छोडेको 7 महिनामा उनी अमेरिका छिरे। यो बीचमा हाम्रो 4-5 पटक कुरा भयो। उनीहरूलाई चाहिँ बीचमा पैसा माग्ने बेलामा मात्रै उनीहरूलाई चाहिँ इन्टरनेट एक्सेस मोबाइल दिँदो रहेछ। त्यति बेला फेसबुकमा अनि मेलमा स्काइपमा हाम्रो कुराकानी हुन्थ्यो र एकदम छोटो, धेरै समय दिँदैन र छोटो कुरा गर्दै डिटेल के भयो भनेर त्यति बेला सुन्न राम्रोसँग बताउन समयले पुग्दैन थियो। अनि अमेरिका 7 महिनापछि पुगेपछि मात्र उनीसँग चाहिँ अनि डिटेलमा कुरा गर्न पाएँ मैले।
After 7 months, this person finally reached the United States, and between that, in between those months, we talked few times. It was a very brief conversation, but I got to know where he was and what he was doing. Actually, they were not allowed to, contact their family or friends, other than when they were allowed to call to demand family to send money so that they could continue their journey.
यो बीचमा मैले रिसर्च अनलाइन के भेटिन्छ, अब केही त होला त्यो ल्याटिन अमेरिकी कन्ट्रीहरूबाट जाँदै गरेका नेपालीको विषयमा, केही त इन्टरनेटमा भेटिन्छ होला, यसरी धेरै पहिलादेखि यो चलिरहेको रहेछ भन्ने थाहा पाएपछि मैले चाहिँ सम्बन्धित ल्याटिन अमेरिकन कन्ट्रीहरूमा रुटमा जुन पर्छ तिनीहरूको अध्यागमनको वेबसाइटहरू चाहिँ मैले चाहिँ पढ्न थालेँ, हेर्न थालेँ। त्यहाँ सबैभन्दा गाह्रो भनेको ल्याङ्ग्वेज मिल्दैन थियो।
And to investigate further, I started studying the website and studying as much as I could about the immigration departments of the countries in transit. But the problem was the language. I could not, properly understand the information because there was a language barrier there.
त्यसपछि मैले चाहिँ गुगल ट्रान्सलेटरको चाहिँ प्रयोग गर्न थालेँ। गुगल ट्रान्सलेटमा गएर चाहिँ त्यो ल्याङ्ग्वेज हालेर इङ्ग्लिसमा ट्रान्सलेट गरेपछि अनि जे चाहिँ नेपालीसँग चाहिँ शब्दहरू मिल्ने जति चाहिँ मैले त्यसरी ट्रान्सलेट गरेर पढ्न थालेँ। अनि कन्टेन्टहरू भेटिन थाल्यो। नेपालीहरू चाहिँ वर्षौँदेखि त्यहाँ चाहिँ पक्राउ पर्ने गरेका रहेछन्। त्यो कुराहरू चाहिँ बल्ल थाहा पाएँ कि बिच बाटोमा नि धेरै नेपालीहरू पक्राउ गरेका रहेछन्, बिचमा केही मरेका पनि रहेछन् त्यो यात्रा गर्दाखेरि।
So when I started looking for keywords and translate it through Google Translate using any keywords like Nepali, then I got to know that this news had been all over these country websites in these countries, and this was actually happening for a long time.
अनि ती कन्ट्रीहरुको अनलाइन न्यूज पोर्टलहरु पनि मैले हेर्न थाले त्यसपछि उनीहरुले केही लेखेका छन् कि नेपालको यसरी यात्रा गर्ने नेपालीहरुको विषयमा भनेर गर्दाखेरि केही न्यूजहरु भेटिए.
Then I got information about news information about how many people were caught and how many people were rescued from the traffickers' net. So as I kept searching, I got more and more information about these trapped people in various countries.
मैले त्यसपछि बोलिभियाको इमिग्रेसनलाई चाहिँ पटक मेल पठाएपछि उनीहरुले धेरै पछि चाहिँ रिप्लाई गर्यो. 2012 को 2 महिनाको बीचमा 500 नेपालीले त्यहाँ अनअराइभल भिसा लिएका रहेछन्.
So I contacted Bolivia's immigration department again and again, and finally they confirmed and shared some information with me about which year was that? Which year?
2012.
Okay, so 2012, 500 people. The department confirmed 500 people had arrived in Bolivia.
त्यसपछि मैले अमेरिकाको इमिग्रेसनको पनि रिपोर्टहरु हेर्न थाले त्यहाँ केही भेटिन्छ कि भनेर अमेरिकाको युएस डिपार्टमेन्ट अफ होमल्यान्ड सेक्युरिटीको चाहिँ थुप्रै रिपोर्टहरु भेटिने रहेछ, त्यहाँ राखेको रहेछ. थुप्रै रिपोर्टहरु हेर्दाखेरि त्यहाँ चाहिँ नेपालीहरुको विषयमा चाहिँ डाटाहरु थुप्रो फेला पारे मैले. अनि त्यसपछि बल्ल कन्फर्म भयो कि यो नेपालीहरु त्यहाँ धेरै पहिलादेखि चाहिँ यसरी ट्राफिकर्सहरुले चाहिँ त्यहाँ लाने गरेको रहेछ भन्ने कुरो त्यो डाटाबाट चाहिँ बल्ल पुष्टि भयो.
And further, I started studying the immigration department's website and Homeland Security Department's website about trafficked Nepalis in the United States, and I got more and more information and data.
अनि नेपाली अमेरिका मेक्सिको युएस बोर्डरमा त्यसरी लगेकाहरु छेड्दाखेरि बोर्डरमा चाहिँ मैले 2004 देखिको डाटा चाहिँ फेला पारे, जो 2013 मा 806 नेपालीहरु चाहिँ त्यहाँ पक्राउ परेका रहे.
So this is the data of Nepalis arrested in Mexico USA border from between 2004 and 2013. So as you can see, more and more people were arrested at the border.
अनि त्यही होमल्यान्ड सेक्युरिटीकै वेबसाइटमा इलिगल रूपमा चाहिँ छिर्ने मेक्सिको बोर्डरबाट छिरिसकेपछि पक्राउ पर्नेहरु चाहिँ 2004 देखि 2013 सम्म चाहिँ को डाटा पनि त्यहाँ मैले फेला पारे रिपोर्टहरु हेर्दाखेरि.
So as you can see, among the arrested, most of them were arrested by the US Border Security Force, and their number in 2013 was 448.
त्यसपछि यसरी छिर्ने नेपालीहरुले चाहिँ ट्राफिकरहरुले जुन रुट यो प्रयोग गरेर चाहिँ अमेरिका पुर्याउँछन्, उनीहरुले त्यहाँ छिर्नेबित्तिकै रिफ्युजी आफूलाई चाहिँ स्ट्याटस माग्ने रहेछ. त्यसपछि त्यस्ता व्यक्तिहरुलाई चाहिँ अमेरिकाले चाहिँ केहीलाई चाहिँ रिफ्युजीको स्ट्याटस दिँदो रहेछ. त्यो पनि होमल्यान्ड सेक्युरिटीको वेबसाइटमा एउटा रिपोर्टमा भेटे मैले. त्यसपछि त्यो निकै ठुलो थियो. यो 2002 देखि 2013 सम्म चाहिँ 6095 नेपालीजले चाहिँ refugee status America पाएका.
So the first thing these trafficked people, when they land into United States, they do is they demand a refugee status. They request for a refugee status, and the U.S. Homeland Security Department's website confirms that till date there are 6,095 Nepali refugees in the United States.
त्यसपछि मैले अरु त्यसपछि मैले अरु देशको वेबसाइटहरु पनि हेरे. थुप्रै नेपालीहरु चाहिँ कोस्टारिकामा 2014 मा मात्र 250 जना 250 जना नेपालीहरु पक्राउ परेका रहेछन्. पानामामा 65 जना. चाहिँ त्यो देश बीचमा थुप्रै नेपालीहरु पक्राउ पर्ने अनि छोड्ने, फेरि चाहिँ तिनी ट्राफिकर्सहरुले चाहिँ उनीहरुलाई चाहिँ लिएर जाँदो रहेछ छुटेपछि.
So as I kept digging, I found out Nepalis arrested in Costa Rica, in Panama, and the way it worked was they were arrested and then again released, and then the traffickers again took them on way.
एउटा यो त्यहाँ थुप्रै यसरी चाहिँ थुप्रै देशका चाहिँ जाँदाखेरि चाहिँ मैले एउटा यो रिपोर्ट पनि फेला पारे, नो मोर डेथ को. त्यसमा 2000 देखि 2014 सम्म त्यो रुटमा 2649 चाहिँ डेड बडीहरु चाहिँ फेला परेको रहेछ जो चाहिँ पहिचान हुन नसकेकाहरू थिए जो अमेरिका हिँड्नेहरूको थियो
So as I kept searching, I came to find that between 2000 to 2014, at least 2,649 unidentified dead bodies were found in the Brazilian-Mexico route, and at least 2 of them in 2014 were confirmed to be Nepali, whose dead body was found in Colombia and in Panama.
यसरी चाहिँ जानेहरूको चाहिँ स्क्यान गर्दाखेरि यसरी चाहिँ मैले यो त्यहाँको ल्याटिन अमेरिकन कन्ट्रीहरूको न्युज पोर्टलहरूबाट लिएको फोटोहरू हो यसरी चाहिँ स्क्यान गरेर चाहिँ उनीहरूले चाहिँ यो पत्ता लगाउँदो रहेछ कि कसरी चाहिँ लगिरहेछ ट्राफिकर्सहरूले भनेर स्क्यान गरेर गए
So this is a picture of a scanner machine which shows people inside a container in a cargo truck.
यो पक्राउ परेका नेपालीहरूको चाहिँ तस्बिरहरू हो त्यो ल्याटिन अमेरिकन कन्ट्रीहरूमा
These are the pictures of trafficked people who were arrested at the border.
यसरी
So some more pictures of people who were arrested.
यसरी 7 महिनापछि मैले उसको स्टोरी मैले 4000 वर्डको एउटा स्टोरी गरेँ डलर पछ्याउँदै 7 महिनामा अमेरिका
So after 7 months of investigation, I finally published my report where I traced the journey of this one person who was trafficked all the way from Nepal into the United States through various Latin American countries, and it was published. It was a 4,000 word report.
त्यसपछि सरकारले केही रुलहरू बनायो इन्डियाबाट उनीहरूलाई चाहिँ नो अब्जेक्सन लेटर अनिवार्य चाहिने नेपालीलाई भन्ने एउटा नियम चेन्ज गर्यो
So after the story was published, the biggest impact was the Indian government, because the Nepalis were being trafficked via India. Indian government made it mandatory for Nepalis flying through India to obtain a no objection letter from their government.
सरकारले नियम बनाए पनि यो जाने क्रम चाहिँ रोकिएको छैन गइरहेकै छैन अहिले पनि गइरहेका छन् हामीले बारम्बार यो न्यूजहरु गरिरहेका छौं अहिले पनि निरन्तर रूपमा तर यो जाने क्रम चाहिँ रोकिएको छैन
These things have changed a bit, but the trafficking network still continues, and so does my reporting.
मैले यो स्टोरी गर्दा अनुभव गरेको कुरा म एक्लैले यो स्टोरीहरु गरे त्यो पनि अनलाइन मार्फत रिसर्च मार्फत र नेट नभइदिएको भए यो स्टोरी सम्भव थिएन र यदि ल्याटिन अमेरिकी कन्ट्रीहरुमा कोही को जर्नलिस्टहरुसँग हामीले सहकार्य गर्न सक्ने त्यो अवस्था हुने हो भने यो स्टोरी अझ बढी एक्सपोज गर्न सकिन्थ्यो यो ह्युमन ट्राफिकिङको स्टोरी
I want to wrap up by saying that I did this story only through online research and few phone calls of the contacts that I had made. The internet was of great help, and so were the some of the tools available there. But had we got a good collaboration with the journalist there, we could have had a even bigger collaborative, investigative reporting.
त्यसपछि अहिले पनि यसरी गइरहेका छन् अहिले पनि निकै जोखिम उठाएका छन् दुर्घटना जुनै पनि दिन हुन सक्छ ठूलो दुर्घटना तर हामीहरुको गभर्नमेन्टको तयारी चाहिँ त्यो छैन रोक्ने कुरामा नि सफल भएको देखिदैन र त्यहाँ कुनै अप्ठ्यारो कुनै दिन ठूलो आपद विपद आइलाग्यो भने त्यहाँ उद्धार कसरी गर्ने भन्नेमा नि त्यति हाम्रो तयारी अवस्थामा छैनौं
The worst thing about what I found in this investigation is when these people are trapped in these countries, they are completely on their own and they are so vulnerable and there is nothing the government can do to help or rescue them because they are in the hand of the criminal traffickers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was really wonderful. We got 20 minutes for the question and answer. You want to make a point? Okay, very good. So, I will start with you. We've got 20 minutes of question and answer. You all are free to raise questions. Raise your hand, introduce yourself, ask who you want to answer the question. Yeah,
Surendra, I'm curious. In Mexico, they have every state has a jail for illegal immigrants, and they hold them there for 6 weeks, and then they release them, and then the traffickers come and get them and take them to the next one. next day. Then they get arrested, potentially and held for 6 weeks, and then released all through Latin America. Is that what they were finding, that they would get taken in and jailed and then released again?
Mexico.
मेक्सिकोमा होइन मेरो चाहिँ ग्वाटेमाला र कोस्टारिकामा त्यहाँ एक हप्ता राख्दो रहेछ 1 विक र 1 विक पछि चाहिँ 1 महिनाभित्र चाहिँ यो देशको सिमाना चाहिँ काटिसक्नु भनेर चाहिँ उनीहरूलाई छोडिदिँदो रहेछ त्यहाँ छोड्ने बित्तिकै उनीहरूलाई फेरि ट्राफिकर्सहरू समात्न पुगिसक्छन् त्यसपछि फेरि उनीहरूको अमेरिकातर्फको यात्रा सुरु हुन्छ
I'm not sure about the Mexico, but I did find out. I did find out that in Guatemala they are held for at least a week. In Costa Rica they are held up for a week, and after that the traffickers get hold of them again, and their journey continues.
I was keen to know because it's really a phenomenal work. You got a question? Okay. I will just come to you. It's a phenomenal work, and I think it's really great to also the journalists come on dais and share the secrets, how they do, how they follow the trial, how they do the documentation collection. A lot of journalists actually are not really keen to do that. I was keen to know what was from Martha, what was the really key challenge when you first started digging the story?
To be honest, the two things that were really a big challenge were to find people who are currently imprisoned, and so getting to Benjina, and then they got there, and it took them. We easily could have left that island without finding those men, and without even understanding what was happening. It was critical that Esther got there because Robin, it was hiding in plain sight, and it often is. And then the second. We really sweated it to connect those dots back to the United States through those customs records. I breezed over it, but it was weeks and weeks of kind of almost around-the-clock tracking. And if anybody wants to sit down with me later, I can show you the websites we used to do that. But it was looking at hundreds and hundreds of different companies and figuring out what brand they might make. Actually, we had to go to supermarkets in the United States a lot to look at the seafood.
You want to add to that? What was the most difficult part of your investigation when you started digging?
सबैभन्दा गाह्रो भनेको चाहिँ हामीलाई प्रमाण जुटाउन नै हो किनभने हामीलाई चाहिँ इमिग्रेसनले पनि ढाट्ने र अर्को भने ल्याङ्ग्वेज हामीलाई जुन ल्याटिन अमेरिकी कन्ट्रीहरुकोमा चाहिँ जर्नलिस्ट त्यहाँको जर्नलिस्टहरुसँग कमसेकम हामी सहकार्य गर्न सक्ने हो भने इन्फर्मेसन बढी थाहा हुन्थ्यो तर नहुँदाखेरि त्यहाँको पाटो चाहिँ हामी पुरै अन्धकारमा जस्तो हुने रहेछ ल्याङ्ग्वेज पनि नमिल्ने र अरु मान्छेसँग सम्पर्क पनि गर्न नसकिने
I ran against the wall on 2 occasions. First, while trying to source information at our own immigration department because they were clearly lying to us. So that was a challenge to prove that their document was a lie. And second challenge was getting information from these victims in these countries because the language barrier was there and sourcing information from the internet alone where the websites were in the local language was very difficult. So we knew nothing about these people once they had left Nepal. So trying to get in contact with them, waiting for their phone call, and getting very precious little information within few minutes. These were all challenges.
Zahra Nader from New York Times. I work with New York Times in Kabul. I have a question from Esther. During you cover the slavery story, did the fish company's owner know that 2 reporters are interned their compound? And did you face with security threat? I want to know about this. Thank you.
Yeah, for a couple of days it was okay because we were staying at the village across the water from the company compound. So we went back and forth from the company and the village. But what we did was, right after a day or two, when the officials started noticing that there are two strangers, women, hanging around in their village, the police, there's one police in the village would follow us around. So Robin actually had to go to, she was teaching at the village school, she was teaching English, so the police actually kind of followed her while she was going around. So I actually sneak out with the guys to the company. But of course there were security who found what we were doing there. Like, they kicked me out from the compound. And one evening we remember that we were filming some of this slaves were like unloading frozen fish to the cargo ship, loading the fish, and we were actually shooting it from the water, from a small boat. And they found us from their binocular, I guess. So they chased us in the water with their speedboat, but we luckily made it to the shore. So there were like intimidations and threats from the local authorities, because this island is just too far from the mainland Indonesia that people didn't even know that it existed. Just this very small island, so it's like kind of a lawless island. That's why there were threats.
Thanks.
My question is to Masa. I think you'll find a very good angle. You cut into like American customers, so like notice that it's a slave product. So I'm curious about, in the beginning, you get this angle, or how to convince your editorial desk spend so many resources on this story?
I had done this before within the United States on a project where we looked at illegal child labor in the United States, and we put 25 reporters in places, found vulnerable children who were working illegally, and just stayed with the product. And we just went with the product to the factory or wherever it was, and we didn't leave that place until we found out what brand it was. And that report had been very effective and changed child labor laws and really shifted the situation. A lot of children and policies as well. So that we had proven that this could work, but we didn't always tell them what we were doing when we were doing it. We just kind of did it, and so it wasn't incredibly costly. The most expensive pieces were the trips to Benjina, and that was a telephone conversation with editors where we said we believe that we have very good reason to believe that people are trapped on this island, and it's going to cost a fair bit to get a team there. And an editor said, if we really think we know where people are enslaved, we have a moral obligation to go. So.
Hi, I'm Stephen Groves. I'm a freelancer here. I was wondering how you originally found Benjina and that people were enslaved there.
Just briefly, by piecing together stories from dozens and dozens of escaped or rescued slaves or people who had formerly been at sea, piecing together their stories and seeing what the commonalities were, and that name kept coming up. Or, gosh, that sounds like they're talking about that same place, and so.
Hi, I'm Gargi. I'm from Cobra Post, India. My question is to Esther and Marta, both, sort of. So the two different case studies that were presented here, I am very fascinated about the difference in their methodologies, because when Surinder ended his presentation, he said, I only did this just using internet as a tool. While we are listening to you, it's a fascinating story, and there are calls to NASA, there are calls to private companies who are providing you satellite stories. There are Capitol Hill hearings, which quickly, close that loophole that you are struggling with. So impact of your stories are also, it's enabled by a lot of other organizations which exist outside the nexus that you're struggling against, and that's huge. A call to NASA and they're ready to help you. I mean, it's a call to a senator and they're ready to go for a hearing to close a loophole in a law. So is a story of the scope that you just presented to us, is it possible to do that with less resources than you had? What would you do if this was like a third world, really small company reporting and it was not Associated Press? What advice do you have for journalists who are doing this every day?
Two things. First of all, this afternoon we're having a networking session to set up some, perhaps it'll be as simple as a Facebook group where people who are in one place and another can do this. Throughout the United States, there are now nonprofit centers for investigative reporting, and the Global Investigative Journalism Network could introduce you to those people. When he was telling his story, I was like, I was in Mexico at an immigration center where they had all these Nepali people, and I was like, what are you doing here? And I can speak Spanish and English, but I don't speak Nepali. And even the Mexicans thought, they were like, where is this country? They're from, the Himalayas. And it was like a terrible language barrier. And their assumption was that they wanted to be continuing their journey to the United States. And so I just shrugged. If we had been on a Facebook group and it had been like, I've tracked these people to Mexico, I could have at least called them. And this is what Esther and within the AP we can do so conveniently. Like, I'll just say, I'm going to be in this place. I think I'm going to run into some Burmese people. Can you be on standby? And so...
Yeah, usually that's how we walk. Like, no matter where we are. Now, at the moment, what we're doing is like, we don't really need to worry about the budget of the story that you're doing just by asking one of your colleagues, like walking together on a story by phone or internet, and that works better.
Yes, thank you. If you're interested in joining this fledgling network, and I understand there's a similar network from Africa as well with about 40 journalists involved, so if we may be able to combine it all, it would be very good to come to our session this afternoon just to get on board, or if you can't make it, just be in touch with us so we can add you to it.
I just want to add, there's a dedicated group in India, about 40 journalists who only cover human trafficking. And they have set up a group on WhatsApp with the help of writers. And that's really doing remarkably well. One last question from here, and then we're ending.
Thanks. I'm Sherry from Taiwan. First, thank you to excellent team. And I have a question for Martha. Sorry, because for journalists, we're always facing the deadline. And in your story, there are two important parts. One is the human rights, and another is the relevancy to the customers. So when did you make up your mind that you have to go through the whole process and not only stop in the trafficking slavery, this part? Even in the trafficking story, it's a excellent story. Why didn't you just stop there, and you still go on the supermarket side, the audience side? What made you to do this decision?
You mean why did we go to the... Oh, I understand. Yes.
Yeah.
The main reason is because it had been very effective in the past. So there's like Paul Newman's salsa or Heinz ketchup or Taco Bell salsa. If I could name those names and say, children, here's a photo of a child picking the chili that ends up in that, they're the ones who have the power, right? They have the money. And so when Walmart itself says, we are not going to get fish from this, that starts to actually force change. Prior to that, it's so frustrating. You do these and we had done them ourselves, these human rights stories. Here's a poor person. Nobody in the United States cares, honestly, particularly. But if they're in Walmart and they're like, oh, wait, this is from Indonesia, and that starts to have a real impact.
So just to conclude everything, the human trafficking story is a story which is happening actually in the middle of us. Like we saw people on on red lights on every Asian stay. Like I was in Afghanistan, I never thought there will be a woman trafficking from Afghanistan. And it was so surprising for someone who covered Afghanistan for 15 years. But it was so shocking because it was happening right in the middle of Afghanistan, and women have been trafficked to India, which was really impossible. I just want to thank this wonderful panel. It was really great, the great session, and I think you really got a sense of how really the complex stories can be investigated. Martha, Esther, and Surendra, thank you so much. They're all here. You can share the cards, you can sit. And if you have any more questions, please feel free to come and just join in. Thanks.
Hello everyone. My friend has lost his phone. If you found, then you can give it to reception. Yeah, sure.
Sorry.